Okay, I've been away. I'm late on this. I would like big changes because holy moly, this game is so stale, bro. This game is so stale. So roaming supports for the limited number of pro games on 26.16, we'll be seeing good movement on roaming supports and expected to trickle down to solo queue over time, especially as players find the strategy less effective over time. Yeah, I definitely think sure the changes that Riot did were really will for sure have an impact, and I think that over time the amount of roaming you're gonna see in the first 5 levels is going to go down. I think this will be a nerf to characters like Pyke and something like Pantheon support and obviously like Camille support. While something like Lulu and Sona and this type of champs that like to stay in lane will be way less effective than that. But overall, I just don't think it's gonna make a huge difference. I think most supports will pretty much lane till level 4 and then they will leave the lane anyway. So I don't think this will have as much of an impact as Riot thinks it does, or maybe the players thinks it does, and I think support will stay as a fucking massive roaming role in general. We'll continue to monitor this and assess whether stronger swings are necessary. Again, I think Riot needs to do something like, it's just still level 5. Like, level 5 is not gonna do a lot. Xerath. As stated in previous posts and videos, Xerath bot is a large part of the AP bot meta. We still think AP bots add a good long-term variety and add a healthy frustration to the role. This is just like a never-ending topic because every AD carry player will absolutely disagree with this, and I can understand why. Xerath's performing well in both mid and bot, especially for average play, receiving a generic nerf. So Xerath is, from what I've checked, he has about 53% win rate in low elo on mid lane, so yeah, the character will need a nerf, I think. Vayne top has been a strong champ in higher levels of play and also a bit over the edge in terms of what we'd consider healthy types of available counterplay in many matchups. Broadly, range tops fill a similar niche to mage bot, which is to add long-term healthy variety to the role, even though it can be frustrating in the moment, and it also adds to their satisfaction when overcome. One of the principles we hold here is that there needs to be a counterplay to frustrating experiences, combination of tactical and strategic. Like Riot can yap about this all they want, but you know, if you're playing Ornn and enemy has a Vayne, there's no such thing as like strategic and tactical, outplay or something, or counterplay. Bro, you're just getting hit for 30 minutes straight. You're getting hit in lane for every minion that you last hit. There's not much like counterplay there. League is too advanced. Players do basic kiting these days. And then you're essentially losing lane and you're essentially getting outscaled, right? For the most part. Like in a lot of these matchups. And yeah, okay. For Vayne top specifically, she can be a combination of tanky with a strong lane phase, scaling well. Yeah, exactly. We think Vayne could have a bit of a weaker lane when played top lane to balance other attributes, but she's still going to be based on the frustrating side of the ranged characters. I don't think it's too far off though, and Vayne will still have a structural weakness of being vulnerable to ganks, especially when she's pushing a lot and doesn't provide much team utility. Well, the thing is like, the problem with Vayne is that the kit is very, very like top and skewed, and you're gonna nerf Vayne here. You're gonna nerf Vayne for botlane too, just as equally hard. And I don't know what the long-term solution to this Vayne problem is, because the moment you buff her back up, it's gonna become a top lane problem again. So I really don't know. I think the kit is just way too problematic, and it's just way too solid and skewed. And you can like balance, like you can change the numbers around to make it a bit better bot lane skewed, which is what they did. But yeah, ultimately, my personal opinion is that there's not a lot you can do with the kit, but one of the things that I would do is I would probably make Vayne be a W max champ again, because I just think she's cooler that way. Whether she's equally as frustrating, but she's just cooler in my opinion. Yasuo and Yone, we're improving the incentives for Yone and Yasuo to build more crit items in the short term, especially on first items, so it can tip the scales in situations where they would otherwise build Bork and Kraken. Long term, we want them to feel good about buying crit, but we know that none of the items feel quite right for them, so that's an itemization hole. Leblanc. A while ago, when Static Shoe was an extremely good one-shot wave clear item, we had to nerf Leblanc's attack speed ratio. After we reworked Static Shoe to be more about on-hits, we didn't restore this ratio to LeBlanc. We're restoring this and giving her a small buff. This is one of the things where I think it's going to be actually quite noticeable, because when I play LeBlanc, I cancel my auto attacks very often, even though I it like genuinely the animation looks like the auto attack goes through, but then it doesn't go through. So hopefully that's gonna like fix that frustrating part. Last patch we made adjustments to Nasus trying to resolve some of his Q between roles and restore some of the stacking power in top lane. To jungle, the balance was off. While we suspected this change would be over magnitude, it's like, do we trust sentences like this? Because it's easy to say we suspected it after the thing happened. It would be nicer if they would actually say before it happens. So then you would be able to trust these things more. This patch we're reducing some of the net total sustain he gets in top lane. I don't know, like, I'm not too excited to read these changes. I have so many issues with this patch, honestly. So, okay, so we have Cho'Gath here. He's gonna get some base damage on E, which is like 10 base damage. It's mostly an early game buff. This is because Halo Blades got nerfed last patch. Kinda makes sense to give him like a compensation buff here. Riot has been recently, or like over the last like 2 years, pushing Cho'Gath to be a lot about E and way less about Q. They want the character to just be E. I don't know. I feel like it would be cooler because his E is already kind of strong right now. It would be cooler if they would buff something else, but more rebuffs. I just feel like if I'm a Cho'Gath main, there's no way I'm getting excited over 10 more damage in E, but maybe that's just me. IRELIA will get 10% more AD ratio on Q, which is primarily an early game buff, because later on, first of all, she doesn't buy a lot of AD. Second of all, it's like, you know, early game will matter more about your Q damage than late game, right? Late game also like armor goes up and stuff. So I think this is like 2 to 5 damage in early game on Q. Is it going to change any of the wave clear breakpoint? Like maybe. You do cast, like in a combo with ult and E, you cast this 3 times on a character, so it will add some damage, but I do think this is a small buff. So Leblanc, we got the attack speed ratio reverted, but the attack speed growth will go down again. And then the W and R2W AP ratio will go up by 10%. So it's like, it's strange to me how we're balancing Leblanc. I think the attack speed ratio coming back makes a lot of sense because, yeah, she will probably not be built as AD. I wouldn't, unless like some version of static shield becomes too OP. Sure, that I understand. But why do we keep giving her damage? Like, if you check the last couple of changes on LeBlanc, it's only damage buffs, and we understand LeBlanc. We want LeBlanc to be like very one-shotty, and we want her to one-shot champions. I get that part, but then why are we buffing? First of all, why are we buffing W, which is the least, the spell we generally don't want to buff? I saw some people like they got excited that this is gonna be a massive wave clear buff. Someone who plays LeBlanc, I don't think so, because a lot of times like you're one-shotting minions on exactly the same wave clear breakpoint, so I cannot doubt this is gonna do a lot for that. I don't know, it's just weird. Like, it's just constant AP ratio buffs, and she's mega squishy, she has no armor, so she's just one-shot by 2 auto attacks late game by every AD carry. So I don't get it, man. I just feel like the balance on this character is just weird. Then we have Qiyana. She's getting 10 more damage. The last time they did that to 5% more bonus AD. The last time they did that to Qiyana, she became turbo OP and they had to nerf it instantly. So we're just following the same pattern here. This is an ability she resets at least 2 times in a fight. I mean, this is just a lot of damage. And yeah, again, it's like the same thing as like every assassin. You give assassin a little bit of more damage early game. It doesn't look a lot, but all of a sudden her lethal thresholds get completely changed and she gets an additional kill and then she snowballs harder and it's just a complete snowball effect. So yeah, a character is just gonna be OP. Yasuo, Yone, 5% less passive crit damage reduction, like sure, but is it going to make them buy a crit item first instead of Bork or Kraken? Unlikely. I think Yasuo could potentially do it with PD Rush because this has been viable for some time now. Yone, will Yone do it? I would say unlikely, but because like, which crit item is he rushing? Maybe Yuntal because it got buffed. That's the only one that's like relatively viable, I guess. Okay. We have a Chandel buff, again, same as Qiyana, right? W of Chandel used to be 120%. When that happened, Chandel was insanely OP, especially in jungle. He was like very overpowered. They had to nerf it, and they specifically went for W. Now they're just reverting the nerf as far as I can remember. So a lot of these changes just feel weird because we're just reverting things that made this character so OP. And then Aesol. Aesol will get 10 more mana cost on Q, less mana cost on Q, and then the W cooldown will go down by 2 seconds late, which is not a lot. So I think the W cooldown buff is a little bit fake. This is probably just to make players realize that you're supposed to max W second instead of E, because a lot of players still make that mistake. The Q buff is probably a little bit of the bigger one here, because when you tap Aurelion Sol Q, it drains your whole mana, like if you were holding it for the whole second, I think. So that's a good early game buff for the tap Q. And then a lot of times Aurelion Sol players, they feel like they're forced to take both mana runes, which is Presence of Mind and Mana Flow Band. And then a lot of players also rush Blackfire Torch. This is going to make it so you are essentially less reliant on Presence of Mind, so you can skip that rune a lot easier, and you are more incentivized to do IRELIA first. So overall, I think the mana buff is nice. Is this gonna make Aurelion Sol a lot better? I'm not really. I just don't think so. On top of that, like all these characters that are getting buffed are pretty much all good against Aurelion Sol as well. So the first thing that I have to say about this buff list is that I find it extremely weird that this is the characters where I decided to buff this patch. I don't think half of them really need a buff, and I also think that League is at a very frustrating point right now, to the point where people are constantly complaining how like mages bot and this and that. So now we're doing a patch where we're buffing like 5 assassins or whatever, like 5 very frustrating champs in the same patch. Like, do people just want, does Riot just want people to like explode? Like, this is not the patch to do this, man. I feel like right now players are fed up with mages bot, fed up with supports roaming everywhere. This is certainly not a good timer to do this. I don't know, just weird. Just weird to buff characters that don't need a buff. Weird to do it on this patch when, yeah, just weird. So Graves will get a nerf because he got, I'm trying to remember, I think Fleet got buffed for Graves and he got MR, right, from last patch. So I guess he benefited a little bit too much from the changes. He's gonna lose some Q damage on the bonus AD, and the return damage will also lose some bonus AD. I guess a little bit less affected if he goes like the tankier build, because he gains a bit more less AD with that build. So Nasus got the Q buff, and Riot will keep it, but they will in return give him less life still. He's also going to basically be healing less, on the Q as well. Okay. Yeah, it's not a lot of ways to nerf Nasus, right? Like, you can't really nerf the W because the champion essentially does nothing if his W is too weak of a spell, gets kited too easily. Can't really nerf the E because it's there to like serve as people not stacking too much armor against him. And the E already got nerfed for laning phase, so where do you go, right? They're not gonna revert the Q buff, so I guess passive is the only option here. Nocturne, base armor down by 2, base HP down by 15. So just a generic durability nerf, slightly squishier. Overall, I don't think this really does anything to like address the frustrating point about Nocturne, which is that the whole kit is only about R, and that he buys items that just make him be an ult spam bot, and that his ult has very low counterplay. So yeah. Thresh will get a nerf probably due to the win rate being very high. Personally, don't really agree with it. I mean, at least someone who plays high elo, Thresh has never played in high elo. Champ kind of sucks, and also like in pro play, you never see him. So I would really like it if Riot would make his W not be blocked by wards, because that could potentially make him be more viable in pro, but that's just me. We have 10 less damage on E and 10% less AP ratio. You get some souls, yeah, whatever. It's mostly an early game nerf. So here's one of the biggest nerfs of the patch, your Vayne. She's getting kind of, deleted, I would say. 30 more base health, but loses 5 more per level, so that's gonna take like, 7 levels, and then you're nerfed. Base HP regen per level will go up level 1, but you get less per level. So it's going to be nerfed also in like 6 levels or something, if I understand this correctly. Attack speed ratio will go up early, down per level, and then the Q mana cost, she has very low mana pool as a character. So 1 Q I think is like 20% of her mana or some stupid shit like that. So yeah, she's gonna Q like 5 times in lane and go apparently. Massive nerf. And then on top of that, they're also nerfing the W damage early and in max Q first. So this is pretty much gonna be a nerf for 12 levels of the game. So it's just like how Riot said it. they're nerfing her early game, which is true. Like if she goes to mid to late game, she's probably going to be the same, kind of relatively the same character. Yeah, I don't know. I think this will really delete Vayne. I do think these are massive nerfs. And then we have a base armor nerf of Xerath, which is just like they have to nerf something, right? It's weird to me that Xerath is performing in low elo, and we're nerfing a stat that is more high elo skewed, which is base armor early game is a high elo skewed, right? If they wanted to nerf Xerath for low elo, they would nerf per level armor. So weird to have a character with 20 armor, but again, it's like the classic thing where they just keep nerfing armor of mages all the time. And then the Q damage, I actually think this might matter because on level 5 you have a perfect wave clear breakpoint where 2 Qs will clear range minions, and I believe with 5 damage loss this will not happen anymore. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it will not happen anymore. So the Q nerf will matter at level 5. Actually, no, sorry, not at level 5, at level 3. When you have 2 points Q. That's the one I'm talking about. Yeah. Seems to be still kind of small nerf, honestly. I still think it's going to be high win rate character. Stormraze is getting 5% attack speed, which I don't think people will get excited about because the item has terrible build path. And Sky is getting nerfed again because the last changes weren't enough for the item, and it still seems to be a bruiser AD meta in jungle. They want Riot wants AP junglers more. So another generic nerf. It's gonna lose like 200 gold worth of stats, something like that. So yeah, I'm really disappointed on this patch. I'm just not happy. I think the Vayne and the Nasus nerfs, those make a lot of sense. The Graves, I can see it. The buff leaves just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I don't know. Not excited. Not excited. But that's what I was gone. I missed this patch preview. They shouldn't give Kiana more damage. Well, people play Kiana because she does damage, right? People play Kiana because she's an assassin who can one-shot people. That's the whole reason why people play Kiana, right? So it's like, if you're not giving her damage, what are you giving her?